Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and thank you again to President Sandu for hosting us today, but more important, for your leadership, for your courage, for the determination that you have displayed through the course of your leadership, but especially over the past couple years. It is so deeply appreciated, and I want to thank you again for everything you have done. Thank you as well, of course, to the organizers, the International Mayors Summit and the Western NIS Enterprise Fund for organizing this event, which I have come to learn is an indispensable catalyst for engagement with local leaders from across the globe, but especially from this pivotal region. This platform is as unique as it is vital, and we are thankful to, again, Moldova and to President Sandu for hosting us here. Indeed, the idea that this is more than a conference comes through in the work of this forum, and even more so in the tangible results that have emanated from these gatherings over the past years. As public servants, the greatest reward is seeing the impact of our work on lives and livelihoods, and the work that this collective is doing every day. We see that. We see that reflected especially in the well-being of the most vulnerable. I know that particularly right now, your work is hard. Many of our countries are facing serious strategic challenges, challenges in many cases stemming from Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Your work as municipal leaders, particularly those of you who reside in this region, has been made all the more difficult by this war of aggression. It's part of the reason why I thought it was so important, we thought it was so important that the United States be represented here today to demonstrate the unwavering support of the United States for Moldova, for Ukraine, and for the broader region. Some might say I've traveled a long way, some 8,000 kilometers to be with you here today. But the fact is that the work that goes on in forums like this has the potential to change the lives of people around the world. That's as true as for the Moldovan people, as it is for the Ukrainian people, the Romanian people, and people throughout this region, as it is for the American people. And that's precisely why Secretary of State Blinken established the State Department's Subnational Diplomacy Office at the department about 18 months ago as part of President Biden's Foreign Policy for All. The goal is to elevate the role, the voice, the vision of local leaders on the international stage. As this group knows well, global challenges require local solutions. And local leaders like you are on the front lines of vital issues, the foremost of which in many ways is the protection of democracy. We see that here in Moldova. We see that next door in Ukraine. No one knows that better than the Moldovan and Ukrainian local leaders who are here with us today. Importantly, not only do they know what they're against, but perhaps even more importantly, they know what they stand for. It's why both Moldova and Ukraine have repeatedly and clearly said that they are oriented towards the West and increasingly integrated with Europe and the broader Euro-Atlantic community. I'd of course like to congratulate Moldova and Ukraine for making progress on EU integration and for doing so in partnership with one another. The partnership between these two countries is really remarkable. It is something to behold, and it is something to emulate for countries around the world as well. The United States welcomed the EU Council's decision in December to open accession talks with both countries. I know, of course, we all know, of course, there is much work to be done on the road to the EU membership, including at the local level. And the U.S. government is supporting this work through programs that strengthen local governments to be more effective, transparent, and responsive to local citizens. But local leadership and extraordinary local leaders are not unique to either of these two countries, and to the contrary, we're seeing them around the world. Yes, we're seeing them, but we're also listening. Those of us who work at the national level have a responsibility to listen to those speaking and leading from the local level. And most importantly, we need to find ways to empower them. In order to further their work, first and foremost, we listen to mayors, to governors, to administrators, and other local officials regarding what it is they care about, their priorities, what they're grappling with, and how they're solving some of the most intractable challenges of our generation. These conversations help us to connect local leaders who are closest to their communities with the tangible benefits of the domain in which I work, and that's foreign policy. Let me give you one example. Earlier this year in Washington, I spent a valuable day with mayors from across the United States. Some of the challenges they face, some of the challenges many of you face, for example, roads and potholes, may have very little to do or very little relevance with the work of the State Department. Others, however, have direct relevance. And one example of that is the scourge of fentanyl, other synthetic opioids, drugs. We're grappling with this challenge in the United States. Some of you in this room may know that in the United States, they're the leading killer of Americans between the age of 18 and 49. Synthetic opioids are the definition of a transnational problem. That is to say, a challenge we can and we must tackle collectively at countries. But this is not only about countries. It's about communities. Our communities, and in turn, our mayors, are on the front lines. In this case, in the case of illicit drugs, they see the havoc they wreak on their communities. They know how they enter their jurisdictions and how they circulate. And they know which of their citizens are most vulnerable to fall prey to them. But they also know what works to counter them. In short, they see the problems up close, and in many cases, will have the best solutions. Not only do we listen to our local leaders, but events like this allow mayors and other local leaders to gather, to compare notes, to discuss the challenges, and to discuss what's worked to solve them. Subnational diplomacy efforts, events like this, explain why robust local-level diplomacy has and will continue to serve communities. That's again why the U.S. Department of State created the Lewis Local Diplomats Program, which assigns seasoned diplomats to spend a year working at the local, county, or state level in the United States. The idea is to assist mayoral offices with direct subject matter expertise and to provide a connection to our embassies and consulates for the advancement of their respective endeavors on behalf of local communities. That's what we're doing at home. But we're also doing a lot of this around the world and in multilateral fora, including at the UN. Take the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, which the countries of the world agreed to in 2015 that we would seek to achieve by 2030. As Ambassador Thomas Greenfield, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, told local leaders from around the world at our Cities Summit in Denver, Colorado last year, ultimately, it is cities, it is mayors who touch the lives of people. It is mayors who will deal with the issues of addressing poverty, deal with issues of addressing climate change at the local level. They actually have the jobs of implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. That's why our team works year-round to promote implementation of Sustainable Development Goal 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, and indeed all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We need the help of leaders at all levels to get us back on pace to achieving these so-called SDGs, less than 1/8 of which are on track to achievement today. We're also working to ensure that the UN's Pact for the Future includes a strong call for greater engagement by local government and intergovernmental efforts to advance the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as peace building, conflict prevention, and mediation. At the upcoming once-in-a-decade Small Island Developing States Conference in May, we've invited U.S. territories and connected with the local 2030 Island Network on a potential side event that will explore how best to support climate change and sustainable development goals in small island and developing states, and to realize solutions rooted in local leadership. We also continue to participate actively in the UN Economic Commission for Europe's annual Forum of Mayors, sharing perspectives and best practices from our Department of Housing and Urban Developments in the United States. We look forward to participating in the 4th annual forum later this year in September. We were pleased to see the UN's launch last year of an advisory group on local and regional governments, and we look forward to reviewing its recommendations for consideration ahead of the Summit for the Future later this year in New York. But to return to where I started, little of this work matters if it fails to reach local officials like you, like the people in this room. That's why it's so important that we take advantage of opportunities like this one to set aside the differences that may divide us, even in my case, if that's some 8,000 kilometers, to come together and to tackle the challenges that matter most to our citizens. So I welcome all of you to share your visions so the United States can be most helpful as a partner, whether it's the State Department, the White House, or other elements of the Biden-Harris administration. We are committed to partnering with you, to working with you, and doing what we can to help improve lives and livelihoods starting at the local level. Again, thank you for having me, and I look forward to hearing the discussion.